The holidays mean so much to me for many reasons. I I've always loved Christmas as a kid. I was always excited about opening my presents. My excitement annoyed my sisters. I am the youngest, so you can kind of imagine the dynamic of me being overenthused about opening presents. I always loved listening to Christmas music. Definitely as an adult, I'm indulging in a lot of holiday movies, especially the past couple of weeks. I've been watching holiday movies that feature diverse casts. Okay, a lot more of those. For sure, I love the holidays because Jesus is the reason for the season. That's something that I always keep in mind. I don't get caught up in the specific of things, when his actual birthday is. I just enjoy the celebration, commemoration of his birth, and the importance that Jesus has in my life as my Lord and Savior. Another reason why I enjoy the holidays is because something really special happened to me 15 years ago during the holidays, during the holiday season. And what happened really showed me how precious and special the holiday season is. And I wanted to share that with you. I want to tell you about what makes the holidays so special to me. 15 years ago, I became sick during the summer of 2005. I had fevers, my joints were swollen, I had rashes on my skin. I really had no idea what was going on with my body. I went to see so many doctors. I went to so many hospitals, so many emergency rooms and stuff. Uh, I saw like, I don't know how many nurses tried to do blood tests. Um, were fighting to find veins on my arms. It was bad. I had a persistent fever. I tried taking um, um, like Advil, Tylenol. The fever just wouldn't budge. My joints hurt. They were swollen. My knees were swollen. I remember at a point, I couldn't even raise my arms. Basically, that summer, I I didn't sweat. It was so weird. It was so hot. Summers in Montreal are very humid and they're sticky. And somehow that summer I couldn't sweat. Like the fever was so persistent. Um, I was kind of scared for my health because I had no idea what I had. I saw one of the first doctors I saw told me that it was anemia. I was like, okay, but I thought that was a bit like my symptoms were a bit extreme for anemia. My mom and I, we tried everything, changing my diet, making sure that I had enough iron. And I noticed that whenever I was exposed to the sun, I felt dizzy. It felt like my condition worsened, but no doctor could really figure out what was wrong with me. It came to a point where in August, I think late August, I had chest pains. It was really bad. I could walk properly without being in immense pain. At that point, I, I hadn't started university yet. I was starting university, I think, 2 weeks after that. So I was home alone and my mom was at work. And at some point, I really thought I was having a heart attack. So I called my mom at work and it was early in the day. I think it was not even 9 o'clock. And she rushed home. We went to the hospital. We waited hours in the emergency room. Um, I think I spent the entire day. I spent actually I think I spent maybe 30 hours in the hospital total, meaning I waited in the waiting room. I saw the doctors, did x-rays, all kinds of x-rays and all of that. And they gave me anti-inflammatory medication to ease the pain. But I was still sick. I was seen by a rheumatologist who couldn't even pinpoint what was wrong with me. He was like, I think it's rheumatoid arthritis, but it could be something else because I see something in your bloods. And I'm like, yo, can someone figure out what I have? So my fall semester starts. It's my first semester in university, and I'm overworked because I decided to take 5 courses, which was a really bad idea. Never do that. If you can, just don't do it. Don't. So I had 5 courses. I still had a lot of joint pain. I had a lot of fatigue. So you can kind of imagine what I was going through. I was overwhelmed mentally, physically. I was just getting worse and worse. I think the worst that I started getting worse in November. The weather was changing. Snow and started falling. It was just getting colder and colder, and my body could not adapt to the weather. It could not tolerate the cold. And it was the end of the semester. So I was just absolutely overwhelmed, and my body was not reacting well to my workload in school and to the pain. And not just like regular pain, it's just constant pain that took a toll, that was taking a toll on my body. In December, it got really bad to the point where I was having chest pains again. I couldn't walk without being absolutely exhausted. I remember one day after school, walking home from the bus stop, it felt like I had to walk 20 miles. Even though it was a 6-minute walk, it felt like my body was giving up on me. I got home that night and I spoke to my mom and I told her, I think we need to go back to the hospital. And she called one of her friends and she recommended that we go to um, a hospital that we hadn't been to yet. Like, I didn't think it was possible to just like run out of hospitals to go to when you're so sick. So we went to the hospital, and I did not know that on that day, I think it was December 12th, 2005. I did not know that I would not be home for 2 weeks. I did not know at that moment. So we got to that hospital, l'Hôtel Dieu de Montréal, which I think is partially closed now. We went to that emergency room. I spoke to the doctor who was on call that night, and I told him about all my symptoms. I told him about the persistent fevers, the joint pain, swollen joints, the fatigue, the chest pain. And then I mentioned something to him that I never mentioned to any other doctor that I had seen for the past 6 months. I told him, yeah, and at some point during the summer, I had rashes on my face. And that was like, I told him all of that within maybe the first 15, 20 seconds of meeting him, of him examining me. And he came up with a diagnosis. He said, oh, that sounds like lupus. And I paused and I kind of freaked out because my grandmother had lupus. And unfortunately, she did not receive the necessary care. And she passed away. And then my second thought was like, where have you been? Like, couldn't I have seen you 6 months ago to avoid all this pain and anguish? So I was glad that he put a name on my pain, but I was also petrified because I associated lupus with like the unknown. Lupus to me, when I was growing up, what I found out about lupus is that it's the disease with 1,000 faces. No two patients have the same symptoms or have the same experience with lupus. Lupus is an autoimmune disease. It's a chronic illness in which your body's immune system is fighting against your organs. Your immune system is kind of jacked up to the point where it will attack your organs. It can attack your muscles, your joints. It can attack your kidneys. It can attack your heart. Um, so, to me, a diagnosis with lupus was a little bit like a death sentence. This disease, to this day, we're not quite sure what's causing that. It's partly genetic, partly the environment. Most people diagnosed with lupus are women and women of color. Most women are diagnosed starting at the age of 20. I was 20 years old when I was diagnosed with lupus. There are many factors that are triggers to lupus patients: stress, sun exposure, um, diet, a poor diet, with like junk food. Junk food can trigger inflammation in the body. Um, Lack of sleep, that can all be triggers in the body. Um, so this disease comes with like this, it should come with an instruction manual. So to me, when I got that diagnosis, the initial diagnosis, I was like, yo, what's going to happen with my life? And what can you do now to fix me? So the doctor in question who properly diagnosed me did blood tests. He drew some blood, and I was admitted to the hospital. It wasn't the intensive care unit. It was kind of the level below that. So I was under observation for the whole night. Then I was transferred to the hospital that I would usually go to, which was the Royal Victoria Hospital, and then the hospital that closed. We're closing a lot of hospitals in Montreal to merge them. So that's another episode. So I get there, I stay under observation, do some tests, and then at some point, I'm told that there's too much protein in my urine and that I need to do a kidney biopsy. So that was terrifying. That was very terrifying. I was admitted into a room. So that became a bit more like, okay, this is getting serious. I was in a room with 3 other patients. Meanwhile, I would get visits from my family every day. So many people came to see me, to encourage me, to pray with me, to just be by my side. And it felt good. I never felt lonely. There was never a moment where I felt lonely, but I was still concerned. So and the following day, I do my kidney biopsy. It was horrible. I felt everything. The anesthesia did not work. Yeah. So as the days progress, I'm told that I might be able to leave the hospital on the Sunday. I did my kidney biopsy. I think it was either the 14th or the 15th. And I felt okay. I mean, I was still in some sort of pain and I was given medication. Everything seemed to be under control until Saturday night, December 17th. I had this pain in my back. I thought it may have been caused by the biopsy, but it wasn't where the biopsy was done. So I was kind of worried. Um, I remember that while I was in that room, my mom paid to have the TV in my room because, yeah, that was like a big luxury. Like, ooh, I'm gonna have TV in my hospital room because I wanted to watch The Sound of Music. I knew that it came on Saturday night, so I was like, I may be in the hospital, but I'm not missing The Sound of Music. Okay. So I remember watching it, and my sister was there, and I remember my boyfriend at the time was there, and he had a bad feeling. And usually, when he had a bad feeling, something bad was gonna happen. And I told him, "Yo, don't chance it. You know what? Take a cab home. At that time, there was a lot of snow. It was cold, so I was like, "Yo, just take a cab home, whatever." And that night, the pain persisted, and it was so heavy, and I knew something was wrong. I remember my one of my sisters stayed with me at the hospital that night, and I woke up in the morning and I knew something was wrong. And when the doctors came to do their rounds and I told them about the pain, they were like, okay, maybe it's because of the biopsy. And they did tests. They checked my heart, and then they saw that I had fluid around my heart. And when they told me that, I literally screamed. I yelled at the top of my lungs. I didn't care who heard me. I did not care at this point. I was like, this disease is trying to kill me. This is it for me. That's it. That's how I go. That disease is gonna kill me by suffocating my heart. And then after crying, and I asked the doctor, when my mom comes, could you tell her what's going on in the most logical way possible and say it in a way that's very like bullet point ish, just so this can kind of appease the emotion of the whole situation. And he was like, you got it, no problem. So my mom came to kind of take over for my sister, and the doctor explained to her what was going on. So basically, I would be admitted as soon as possible, as soon as an emergency and the operating room would be available. And at that time, I think it was almost noon. Not even. It was early in the morning. It was early in the morning, maybe 9 o'clock in the morning. And they said, as soon as a room is available, we will take you there and we will do the operation, which consisted of removing the fluid around my heart. So from that moment, it was kind of like, okay, what's going to happen to me? They gave me a bit of oxygen just as a precaution. So my heart would be lacking oxygen, to pump through my body. I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. At some point, I was transferred to a single room as I waited for the room to be available. I spent the whole day that day looking at a clock in my room, waiting for someone to come and get me. And I spent the whole day until 9 o'clock at night. It was terrifying. And every doctor that came in, every nurse that came in to do rounds, they kept telling me, oh, don't worry about it. Like we did so many of these surgeries today. I'm like, that's not making me feel better. Like I appreciate your confidence in your doctors, but I don't know those doctors, and don't tell me to relax. One doctor came in for rounds, and he saw that my heart rate was increasing, and he was like, oh, why is your heart rate so high? I'm like, because I'm worried. And he told me, relax. So yeah, finally around 9 o'clock, 9:30, they came to get me, and I was scared. All I could do was just say Psalm 23 out loud. Back then, I have to say that I had left church when I was 15. I still prayed, I still read my Bible, but I didn't have I wasn't saved yet. I didn't have that intimate relationship with God that I have now. But my only resort was to say Psalm 23 out loud at the top of my lungs. And even when I did that, the doctor was like, "Yeah, just relax." But I didn't care. I was like, God, this is you're taking care of this. I need you right now. I was so scared, and they took me to the operating room. They put all kinds of catheters. They put one in my neck, and I was so scared. And They put me to sleep. I counted backwards to like 100, 99, 98. I think I remember getting to 97, and then that was it. My main fear was not waking up. Thankfully, I did. And when I did, I woke up to a sore throat and I was hacking like an old lady. And I remember like coughing like so loud and it hurt. And although it hurt, I was like, I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive. And then one of the doctors that was there was like, oh yeah, we put a tube down your throat for the operation. Like, oh yeah, okay, gee, thanks. Thanks for letting me know. I hadn't noticed. So as I woke up and I was coughing, hacking, the doctors around me were scurrying, picking up everything. And next thing I knew, in like almost a blink of an eye, I was all alone with one of the nurses with a little cup and a straw, a cup of water and a straw. And she was giving me water to drink. And she was so sweet. She was like, oh, how do you feel? She was like, it's gonna be okay. She was asking me to move my toes, and I was moving my toes. And I was waiting for my mom to come. And at that time, it was 1 o'clock in the morning. I remember looking at the clock. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. So after that, I was bedridden for, I think, 3 days before I started walking again with a physical therapist. And my family came to see me every day. People from church came to see me every day. Every day I had guests to the point where the doctors were annoyed with my people. But that was good. And then I was really looking forward to coming home. My operation was on December 18th. And it got to be December 22nd. And my sisters were telling me, oh yeah, we'll bring you turkey sandwiches for Christmas. We'll do a little celebration in the hospital. And I was listening to them talking. I was like, you guys are out of your mind. There's no way I'm spending Christmas in a hospital. And I had this sort of confidence. It wasn't even denial. I was like, I'm not spending Christmas in a hospital. I need to be at home at my mom's, eating her cooking and being with my sisters, opening presents and watching a movie and having a great time, not in a hospital gown. But my sisters were telling me, oh yeah, don't worry. We'll do something in the hospital. But I did not care what they were saying. I was confident I was coming home. So December 22nd, I think it was late at night, I was telling my sister who took over for my mom. They would alternate. One day it was my sister Cindy, the other day it was my mom. So that night I was with my sister Cindy and we were talking and I told her, I want to go home so bad. I can taste it. And she was like, yeah, you're coming home soon? Yeah. So that night, I had a dream where I was in my hospital room. I was lying in my bed and my sister was sleeping in a chair, an uncomfortable chair next to me. I appreciate her for being a good sport. And I saw this presence on my right. And the presence felt like it was Jesus in my dream. And the next morning I woke up feeling hopeful. I did not know when I would leave the hospital, when they would let me go, but that morning I felt hopeful. I did more tests that day, and at some point my sister left to go to work and my mom was on her way to the hospital, so I was by myself. There were other people in my room, but I felt a deep sense of loneliness at that moment. It was almost around noontime, and I was just waiting for my mom to come, and I felt really sad and lonely, and I started crying. And I remember the man that was in the bed next to me. He was asking me, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm okay." I didn't want to bother him, although it was very nice, but I didn't want to bother him. I had closed the curtain just to have some privacy. And I felt really sad. And I started thinking, I started like visualizing my life, how my life would be outside of the hospital after this whole saga of me being sick and hospitalized, and it made me feel so hopeful. And I would say a few moments after that, the doctor came in and told me, "Are you leaving today?" I'm like, "I don't know." I'm like, "Man, I don't know. Okay, I don't know what you guys are seeing in my results, my tests. I don't know." And she was like, "Well, you've been improving a lot, so you might be going home today." And I was like, don't play. Just don't play with me. Just don't play with me. Don't play with my emotions. It's almost Christmas. I want to be home. Don't just start telling me stuff that's gonna get my hopes up. I don't care. And she was like, let me go and get the machine to check your heart and check the results, and maybe you can leave today. And I was like, whatever. So they do the test, and I'll test, and they check the results. They're like, oh, you should be fine to go today. I'm like, and I'm like, my mom's on the way. I can't wait to tell her. So my mom gets to the hospital, and the doctor tells her, yeah, she can go home today. My mom was looking at the doctor like, really? You sure? You sure? You sure she can go home? They were like, yeah, it's fine. We'll sign the papers, and you'll be on your way. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to go home. It's December 23rd. I'm like, oh, that's what's up. So we're trying to get a ride to go back home. And I don't know, God made provisions for me, because at the moment that we were looking for a ride to get back home, two of my closest friends, they came to visit me. They were like, oh my gosh, we came to visit. And I'm telling them, yo, I got my release today. Like, I can go home. They're like, no way. So they were available to drive me back home with my mom. So that was God set everything up just correctly for me to go home and to be happy, and it was perfect. We did get lost um, to get home, but it was a fun ride. We had fun. We cracked jokes, and it took us a little longer to get home, but it was okay. We had fun. I was just so grateful for these friends for showing up at the nick of time. It was just God's perfect timing. I got home. It felt so good to be home. Oh my gosh, it felt so good to be home. Later that day, my sisters came and they put up the Christmas tree. I'm usually the one, the dedicated tree decorator, but unfortunately, because I had been in the hospital for 11 days, I had never had the opportunity to put up the Christmas tree. And even the weeks before that, I was so sick. I had no energy to put up the Christmas tree. So they came in, they put everything together. I remember making all kinds of phone calls when I got home. I was like, I'm home, calling my friends, and they were so happy. So to me, the holidays have just this special meaning to me, because on December 23rd, 2005, God came through. He came through not just for me, but for my family as well. They went through a lot. I can never really fully understand the impact that the disease had on them. I could only experience what I was going through, the mental anguish of being in so much pain. But I know that it affected them a lot to see me in the hospital. But what I'll be forever grateful for is for their presence every day that I was in the hospital, feeling the love. And one of my love languages is quality time. And although I was hospitalized for 11 days, each of those days, I got to spend quality time with the people that I love the most. And to me, that was the most precious gift that I could have had in the most difficult period of my life. I don't wish an illness on anyone. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Lupus is a great foe, and it almost took me out. But God showed up and showed the devil that He had the last word, and I'm so grateful that 15 years later, I'm alive to tell my testimony and maybe give a few words of encouragement to anyone who is dealing with a chronic illness, especially with lupus. There's hope, and God can come through, and God can come through during the holidays. And that's what makes the holidays so, so special to me.